I'm Marissa Quinn. And this is the story of the night I got kicked out of a party, not for causing trouble, not for being drunk, but because I didn't match the vibe. My soon-to-be sister-in-law, Vanessa Whitman, the same woman who once smiled while asking me to alter her wedding dress, pointed right at me in front of everyone and said, "We don't need outsiders killing the mood." No one defended me. No one spoke up. His family turned away. And my boyfriend? He wasn't even there. Because they deliberately told me I couldn't bring anyone along. I sat alone near the bathroom, wearing the linen dress my mother once stitched by hand, overhearing whispers from guests who thought I worked the event. But what they didn't know was that a black car was waiting for me at the gate. And inside a private jet with soft, humming air conditioning was Nathaniel Rowan, a Forbes-labeled tech phantom CEO holding an engagement ring and 2 signed marriage contracts. But hold on, this isn't just a love story. This is a story about erased dignity, about a woman once cropped out of every family photo, now standing at the center of the world's attention, simply by walking away at the right moment. And it's a story for anyone who's ever been told, "You don't belong here." Because sometimes, the boldest way to clap back is to show up where they can no longer control you. The car pulled up in front of the Whitman estate at 5:56 p.m. I checked my watch again, then took a deep breath before stepping out. The linen dress my mother had sewn by hand fluttered slightly in the cool evening breeze, and my fingers tightened around the gift wrapped in recycled paper. A framed vintage map print of Portland, the city where Nate and I first met at a sustainable product seminar. I thought it was meaningful enough. But as I spotted the 2 women standing at the gate in silk dresses and glinting jewelry, their eyes slid right past me like I was a delivery worker who showed up at the wrong time. Something tightened in my chest. Still, I walked in, trying to keep my shoulders back and head high just like my mother always taught me. The girl with the headset at the gate scrolled through names on her tablet. "Name?" she asked, her eyes flicking from my hair to my dress. "Marissa Quinn," I said, evenly. Her finger paused. "You don't have a +1. The family guest list only allows individual entry." I blinked. I RSVP'd for 2, myself and my boyfriend Nathaniel Rowan. She gave a tight-lipped smile and lowered her voice. "Sorry, the final list says solo. He's welcome to wait in the car if you'd like." I should have been angry. I should have challenged it. But instead, I just gave a faint smile, nodded, and walked past like it didn't matter. Inside, the space looked like something out of a wedding magazine shoot. High ceilings with crystal fixtures, cream lace-covered tables, white florals, scented candles, everything arranged to look effortlessly elegant. But I knew better. The more accidental something looks, the more curated it actually is. And at the center of that stage was Vanessa. She floated through the crowd like the star of a perfume commercial, loose curls, emerald satin gown, champagne flute lifted like it was a crown. When she saw me, she paused for half a second, then gave a tiny nod, just enough to be polite, but nowhere near welcoming. I scanned the room for my seat. There was no place card with Marissa Quinn. Eventually, someone led me to a small table near the hallway leading to the restrooms. No flowers, no candles, no table mates. Just a lone chair near the wall and the faint smell of hand soap drifting from the bathroom. I sat down, adjusted my dress, and tucked the gift bag beneath the table. An older man walked by, tilting his head. "Are you part of the catering staff?" he asked. I smiled politely and replied, "Not my shift tonight." He chuckled awkwardly and kept walking. Another girl, maybe a friend of Vanessa's, leaned over to her companion and whispered, "Who is that? She doesn't match the vibe." I didn't turn around. I just tightened my grip on the corner of my napkin. A soft string ensemble played, and a slideshow video lit up the large screen. Beach vacations, holiday dinners, greenhouse brunches, all photos of the Whitman family. I looked closely at each frame. Nate was in nearly every shot. His parents, his brother, even Vanessa. But not me. Not a single one. Even though I went to the Maldives with Nate last year, even though we took photos together at the Oregon flower fields, even though I stood beside his mother at Christmas, I hadn't been overlooked. I had been erased. A waiter passed by, and I picked up a sparkling lemonade. Not to drink. Just to have something in my hand. Something to anchor me from crying in a place where people laughed too hard at things that weren't real. I thought about my mother. She once wore this same dress to a wedding hosted by an aunt who had always looked down on her. She said, "This dress doesn't make me prettier than them. It makes me unlike them." I didn't understand that when I was younger, but now I do. My mother's dress doesn't fit this party, but it fits me. Me, the woman quietly pushed into the shadows of a stage she never auditioned for. Vanessa took the stage to applause. The spotlight hit her like the universe was conspiring in her favor. Thank you all for coming. And a special shout out to Marissa Quinn. You really tried. She smiled softly without looking at me. No one turned toward me. I lifted my glass. The liquid inside stayed still, just like me. I whispered. They don't see me. But they'll remember. Not because I made a scene, but because I've stayed silent far too long. And in that moment, I knew. I wasn't here to be accepted. I was here to confirm this place was never mine to belong to. And I was ready to walk away. I stood up, still holding the glass in my hand, and walked away from the seating area. No one stopped me. No one questioned it. At a party this crowded and lit up, the only invisible person was me. I passed by the main table where Nate's parents were chatting with an older couple, the same ones who once shook my hand 2 months ago when Nate brought me to dinner. That night, Mrs. Whitman smiled and said, "Oh, sustainable design sounds interesting." Today, she avoided my gaze like I was a stain on the oil painting she was proudly displaying. I meant to step outside for air. But as I turned down the hallway near the side door, I bumped into Jeremy, Nate's cousin, the one who once asked me for my soft plastics recycling proposal for his startup. He gave a sheepish smile. "Marissa, hey. Do you happen to know the time?" "I forgot my watch, and my phone's dead." I nodded, pulled my phone from my clutch. The screen was black. Dead battery. "Let me check yours then." He didn't hesitate, handed it over. No luck. I left the charger in the car. I lit up the screen. A message appeared right in the notification bar. Group chat. The Whitman Inner Circle. Below it, one bolded line. "Let's just hope she doesn't make a scene tonight." I swallowed hard. My heart pounded in my chest. I scrolled up to the previous message. "At least she wore beige. She blends into the wall." Zuan. And before that, Vanessa. If she asks again why she couldn't bring her boyfriend, just blame the mail system glitch. I didn't scroll further. I didn't need to. I handed the phone back to Jeremy with a small nod. "Thanks." He smiled, unaware. I turned and walked away, but now my heart wasn't quiet anymore. Not because I was shocked, but because everything I'd once suspected had just been confirmed. I wasn't forgotten. I was excluded. Intentionally. Systematically. I kept walking toward the side exit. The air outside felt cooler than I remembered. Portland's sky had turned a pale blue-gray, and the wind from the Cascades brushed softly past me, as if it were trying to soothe me after a day spent lost in someone else's world. I sat down on a stone bench near a small fountain, still holding the empty glass. The phone in my clutch buzzed. I'd plugged in a backup charger when I left the table. A new message popped up. "Nathaniel Roven. If you want to leave, I'm waiting exactly where you need me to be. Wheels up anytime." I read the message again and again. No question. No pressure. Just an open door, quiet but warm. I stood up. The lights from the mansion still blazed behind me. The clinking glasses, the laughter, the music floated out faintly. A part of me wanted to turn around, yell, demand respect. But the other part, the deeper, calmer part, knew that would just be another chapter in a book not worth finishing. I pulled out my phone and typed one line. "Marissa. Westgate. I'm not bringing anything but my mother's dress." Message sent. I didn't wait for a reply. I turned my back on the party and walked away, heartbeat steadying. I didn't need a dramatic exit. I just needed to leave while they were still busy performing. When I reached the gate, the black sedan was already waiting. The driver stepped out and gave a small bow. "Miss Quinn?" "Mr. Rowan gave instructions at 7. Your luggage has been arranged." I paused slightly. He knew I'd leave? The driver gave a soft smile. "Number. But he knows you well enough to prepare for what others might doubt." I stepped into the car, the door closing quietly behind me. The soft scent of leather and jasmine filled the space. And in that moment, I realized I was never the outsider. They were just too afraid of someone who didn't need to perform, to still be seen. The car glided through the suburban streets, now glowing with evening lights. I leaned back against the seat, still loosely holding the empty glass, the only thing left from the party where I was quietly erased from their lives. No flashing cameras, no one chasing after me. And strangely, I didn't need any of that anymore. My phone buzzed. A message from Nate. Nathaniel Rovan. They can control the frame, but they can't control who walks out of it. The plane door is open. I looked up, lips curving slightly. Not quite a smile, just a feeling of rightness. I didn't touch up my makeup, didn't change dresses, didn't fix my hair. My mother's linen dress still had wrinkles at the hem and the sleeves were slightly faded. But it was real. And so was I. As the car turned into the VIP entrance at Hillsborough Airport, everything quieted. No horns. No announcements. Just soft lights, the hum of tires on smooth asphalt, and the driver stepping out to open the door. "Miss," he said gently, then bowed. I stepped out, the night wind sweeping past like it was clearing away the fake perfume of the party I'd just left. In front of me stood a sleek silver jet, elegant, minimal, no logos. Just an open cabin door and the silhouette of a man waiting at the top of the steps, holding a wine glass, standing like he'd been waiting a lifetime for me to finally choose myself. Nathaniel didn't say a word when I reached him. He simply handed me the glass, pressed a soft kiss to my cheek, not for show, not for drama. Just presence. The kind an entire mansion full of people couldn't give me. I stepped into the cabin. No hanging flowers, no ribbons, no one shouting groom and bride. Just a small wooden table by the window, with 2 handwritten vows, and 10 name cards for people attending, not for status, not for press, but for love. I sank into the seat, feeling the soft leather cushion me like it understood. Nathaniel refilled my glass, then handed me a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten wedding invite. No bride's side, no slogan. Just one line. Marissa Quinn, the woman who didn't need an invitation to step into her own frame. He sat across from me. "You don't need to change," he said softly. "That dress has been through the worst. Let it witness the best." I laughed for the first time in hours. Not politely, not bitterly, but the kind of laugh I thought I'd lost. "So we're getting married right now?" I asked, voice slightly hoarse. Nathaniel nodded. "In the clouds. No need for permission. No need for proof." The plane began to taxi. The engine's low growl steadied into a rhythm beneath my feet. As we lifted off the ground, I turned to look out the window. The city lights shrank beneath us, like memories being pressed into silence. No one below knew where I was. And for the first time in my life, I felt relieved by that. The pilot announced we were headed east, cruising at 35,000 feet. Inside the cabin, no one said much. Nate's guests sat scattered, quietly chatting, raising glasses, no phones lifted to record a thing. I recognized a few faces: Nate's mentor, his best friend from college, and an older woman whose eyes looked uncannily like my mother's. There were no lavish rituals. No choir. Just me and Nathaniel, standing in front of a close friend of his, a retired judge, who promised to officiate only 3 weddings in his life. Ours was number 3. My vow was simple. I used to try to fit into other people's stories, but you didn't love me for blending in. You loved me for stepping out. Nathaniel looked at me, hand in mine steady as stone. "You don't need my name to be enough. You already were. I just want to walk with you." We exchanged rings. No applause. But I could hear my heart like a drumbeat, steady, strong, and free. As the plane soared over the Rockies, I sat by the window, hot tea in hand, watching the clouds shift colors in the dawn light. Beside me sat the man who saw me when the world turned away. And for the first time, I didn't mourn the photos I'd been cut from. Because now I held the camera. And the story was mine. Morning light slipped through the window, casting soft golden streaks across my shoulder like the first smile after a storm. I leaned my forehead against the glass, warm tea still in hand, my chest loosening for the first time after months of living inside someone else's curated frame. No one spoke loudly in the cabin. They didn't have to. At 30,000 feet, silence felt like freedom. Nathaniel sat across from me, his laptop open, eyes focused on a freshly downloaded file. When he turned the screen toward me, I saw the title. Raw Footage Whitman Engagement Party. He said nothing, just hit play. The screen lit up with familiar scenes from the night before: crystal lighting, frozen smiles, Vanessa's carefully crafted image. In a corner shot from a ceiling camera, I appeared crossing the hall, being mistaken by a server for the help. The next clip. Vanessa beside Nate's mother, glancing my way and whispering, "What is she wearing? Is this some kind of budget bride cosplay?" The soft laughter that followed chilled my spine. I said nothing. I just watched. No blinking. No tears. What I had once suspected now played out in image and audio undeniable. Nathaniel looked at me, voice low. I hired a separate media crew to document the event from a distance, not to attack anyone, just to preserve the truth. In case you ever needed proof of your own story. I closed the screen. I don't need revenge, I said calmly. I just don't want to be distorted anymore. Nathaniel nodded. And now you've seen it. That's enough. We landed at a private airfield near Chicago at 6:30 a.m. As I stepped off the plane stairs, I caught the scent of fresh coffee wafting from the lounge. I thought I'd feel emotional, but instead, I felt light. As if the years I spent surviving in the Whitman's shadows had finally lifted. I turned my phone back on. 7 unread messages. 3 missed calls. A flood of social notifications. Twitter and TikTok were flooded with posts like, CEO Rowan secretly weds the girl on the sidelines, high society plot twist no one saw coming. Is this the beige dress girl who got kicked out? Like a movie. The woman they mocked was boarding the private jet as their future. Aga. I tapped on a TikTok going viral. The clip opened with Vanessa's voice. Don't ruin the vibe, Marissa. This is a family-only event. Then me, holding Nathaniel's hand, walking toward the plane, wind lifting my hair, my mother's linen dress trailing behind. A caption appeared. You don't have to stand out, just show up, at the right time, with the right person, and the courage to leave. 4.2 million views. Over only 0 comments. I didn't reply, I didn't post. I didn't need to. On screen was a photo of me, wrinkled dress, slightly messy hair, but steady eyes, hand in Nathaniel's, at the top of the private jet stairs. The caption read, "The girl rejected at the party now center stage in CEO Rowan's real life." Vanessa pressed her lips together. Her eyes scanned the room. A guest leaned in and whispered, "Didn't you say she was just some forgettable ex?" For the first time, Vanessa had no reply. Her hand trembled slightly. The mimosa nearly slipped from her fingers. Everything was still unfolding like a performance, except now, it wasn't her script anymore. And me, I didn't celebrate. I didn't retaliate. I just sipped my coffee, looked out the hotel window as sunlight poured in, and thought. For the first time, they didn't just see me. They saw me. And couldn't erase me anymore. Okay. An hour later, I arrived at the small house in the northern suburbs of Chicago, where Aunt Rebecca had lived since Mom passed. It was unchanged wooden floors, round windows, the oil painting my mom had done still hanging above the fireplace. She led me into the study, opened a safe, and took out a small silver USB and a yellowed envelope marked in familiar slanted handwriting. For Marissa, when the time is right. She didn't say anything more. We plugged in the USB together. The screen stayed black. Then slowly brightened. My mother appeared older than I remembered, her hair grayer but her eyes still shining. She sat on the wicker chair in her garden, wearing the scarf I used to help her fold during her final rounds of chemo. Her voice was soft, but not weak. If you're watching this, you've probably realized they didn't protect you like they promised. And if you're here, it means you're still standing. My love, I never thought you were fragile. I thought you were too kind. And it's that kindness that let people hurt you, people who never deserved it. I couldn't hold back the tears. My mother looked straight into the camera, straight into me. You weren't forgotten. You were filtered out. Your name didn't disappear, it was hidden. Because you became someone they couldn't control. She paused, then continued, more slowly. I left you a few things. The house in Galveston, a modest savings account, and a journal I kept during my final years. I didn't trust anyone else to deliver them, because I knew they'd try to bury it the way they buried you from every important moment. I opened the envelope. Inside was a list of transferred assets, property deeds, bank accounts, and especially, a stack of photocopied checks my mother had sent, but that I never received. I sent you 3 times, once when you started college, once when you opened your first studio, and once after last Lunar New Year. You never replied. At first, I thought you were angry. But later, I knew. They never made it to you. Aunt Rebecca gently pushed a folder toward me, neatly clipped in a plastic sleeve. I looked at the deposit receipts. The messy signature scrawled on the back wasn't mine. But it looked remarkably like Vanessa's handwriting. I clenched my fists. She forged it. Oh, Aunt Rebecca nodded. Vanessa told everyone she was protecting your dignity. That if you accepted money, you'd feel weak. I couldn't say anything. I just sat there, staring at the crooked letters used to block the truth from reaching me. A few days later, I met with an attorney. He skimmed through the files, then looked up at me. "We can pursue this. Signature fraud, asset obstruction, deliberate interference, strong case." I shook my head. I don't need a courtroom win. I need this truth. On record. No press? Not yet. This isn't revenge. It's documentation for everything they tried to erase. He nodded. Understood. Not an attack. But solid, permanent. That evening, I returned to the house from my childhood, the one left vacant since Mom passed, because no one wanted to take official ownership. Now, it was mine. I opened the door, dust swirled up, but the scent of old wood and plaster still lingered. In my old bedroom, I hung a single frame. A still from Mom's video, her hand lifted mid-gesture, eyes focused on the lens. I circled the line she spoke, then wrote below it in marker. That is love. And love deserves a legacy. I left the house as dusk fell. The streetlights hadn't turned on. The neighborhood was still. But I was no longer in the shadows. And the ones who tried to keep me out of the frame were finally seeing me clearer than ever before. Chicago's late autumn chill came faster than I remembered. In the 17th floor apartment where Nathaniel and I were temporarily staying, the soft hum of the coffee machine blended with the steady ticking of the wall clock. He was asleep in the bedroom. I stood alone in the kitchen, stirring a cup of chamomile tea that had long gone cold. After the video from my mother had been carefully processed and archived, I felt a quiet emptiness, like her spirit had finally left, at peace. I was about to rinse my cup when there was a knock at the door. 3 knocks. Slow, uneven, hesitant. I frowned. The clock was close to midnight. I opened the door. Vanessa. She stood there, expensive wool coat whipping in the wind, lipstick smudged, dark circles under her eyes, and mismatched high heels. In her hand was a white canvas tote with dirt along the edges. A far cry from the woman who once stood center stage with a voice like a news anchor. She looked at me. Her mouth opened, but no words came for the first few seconds. Then her voice cracked, so soft I had to lean in to hear. They froze everything. My accounts, assets, credit cards, even my lawyer's retainer got denied. I didn't react. She glanced past me into the apartment, like she was hoping someone else would appear. Then she looked back, stammering. He's under federal investigation. The IRS took the whole system down. I didn't know. I swear. I didn't reply. I just looked the same look I had used to survive every party where I was treated like background noise. Her eyes dropped. I don't know where else to go, she whispered. Everyone's gone silent. Even his mother, she told me. I made myself a burden. I opened the door wider. Not much. Just enough to show her I wasn't the girl she once dismissed, but I also wasn't here for revenge. You can stay tonight. Living room. One time. Our routine. Vanessa nearly collapsed onto the floor, but managed to stay upright. I handed her a bottle of water and a clean towel. She sat on the sofa, knees drawn to her chest like a lost child. Her eyes were puffy, but she didn't cry. As I handed her a thin blanket, she whispered, "You probably think I deserve all of this, and maybe I do." I stood a few feet away. My voice wasn't raised. It wasn't cold, it was simply honest. It's not that I think so, I know it. She gripped the blanket tighter. I didn't stop. You watched me get pushed out of every frame, then erased the few chances I had left. You forged my mom's checks. You laughed while I sat alone near the bathroom table. And now you want me to pretend I remember none of it? Vanessa inhaled shakily. So what do? Beg? Fall to my knees? I shook my head. No more performances. I don't need you to kneel. I just need you to understand my silence all these years wasn't weakness. It was a choice. Law. I turned to go, but she called after me. Marissa, do you think you'll ever forgive me? I looked back. The living room light cast shadows on her face, a woman who once thrived on praise, now trembling under a gaze that no longer needed validation. Forgiveness, I said, isn't forgetting, it's just not bleeding for the same wound anymore. She lowered her head. I left the water bottle on the table and walked into the bedroom, closing the door behind me. Nathaniel, half asleep, turned toward me. You okay? I nodded softly. She showed up. I let her stay the night. He didn't ask more. He just reached for my hand beneath the blanket and whispered, "You don't owe her anything." I looked up at the ceiling, where the city lights cast faint patterns across the paint. And I whispered back, "Number. But I owe myself a life that doesn't carry hate." That night, I slept deeply. No dreams, no jolts, no sense of being forgotten. Just a quiet I thought I'd never feel again. But sometimes, quiet begins the moment we stop expecting truth. From people who never meant to tell it. A week after the night Vanessa knocked on my door, I received a thick, silver-edged envelope embossed, no sender name, just a single line in italic print on the back. The Holleridge Foundation, Dallas Chapter. Inside was a formal invitation to their annual charity gala, one of the most prestigious events in the Southern elite circuit. A night of silk gowns, tuxedo collars, French champagne, and speeches polished down to the final comma. A night that once belonged to Vanessa. The invitation didn't mention her. But the email that followed did. "We've seen the video. Your composure, your clarity, and your self-respect represent exactly the image our foundation is shifting toward. We would be honored to have you join us this year." I didn't say anything. Didn't reply right away. Nathaniel read the message and simply said, "You don't have to prove anything, but you have every right to walk into places you were once shut out of." I nodded. Not an agreement, just an acknowledgement. The gala took place inside a luxury hotel in the heart of Dallas. The main hall glowed under hundreds of candles suspended from the ceiling, cascading down golden silk drapes. Gray velvet covered the walls, softening the atmosphere, while a string quartet wove music through the air like mist. I walked in with Nathaniel. He wore a dove gray suit, no tie. I chose a navy blue gown, simple, classic, no skin, no sequins, just clean lines that fit like the quiet confidence I carried. The whispers traveled faster than electricity as I stepped through the doors. "That's her, the woman from the video. The one Vanessa kicked out of the party? Isn't she Rovan's wife now?" I didn't look around. I didn't need to. You can feel when a room turns not because they admire you, but because they no longer know how to categorize you. We were led to the table of honor, right near the stage. As I pulled out my chair, my eyes paused on the 10th seat at the table set at the very end, directly across from the mic stands. A name card rested on its back, handwritten, delicate, but firm. Reserved for those who relearn the old lessons. Nathaniel sat beside me, offering a quiet smile. "They get it now." I tilted my head slightly. "Not all of them." And just then, Vanessa stepped onto the stage. She wore a black velvet gown, hair swept up high, diamond earrings I remembered from an old photo. Her eyes scanned the audience, pausing barely a second on our table. She saw me. I knew it. She drew a breath, picked up the mic. Her voice still composed, still crisp, was the Vanessa everyone once thought unshakable. "We've all stumbled," she said. "But only a few of us get back up and relearn the lessons we once ignored." A beat of silence. She glanced at the chair with the handwritten sign. Her face stayed composed, but her bottom lip trembled just for a moment. The entire room fell still. No one said a word. But everyone understood. And in that quiet, a woman 2 rows behind me leaned toward her friend and whispered clearer than she meant to. "That's real power." She didn't take the mic, and still made the room turn. Vanessa finished her speech and stepped off the stage. Her heels didn't echo like they used to. They didn't strike the floor like someone in command. They sounded like footsteps from someone who had just realized the spotlight was no longer hers. I said nothing. I wasn't the one to close this chapter. I simply rose, touched Nathaniel's shoulder. He nodded. We walked out of the hall through the long, carpeted corridor. No one stopped us. No one blocked the way. But someone looked back. Vanessa. She stood near the bar, her wine glass still full. No resentment, no jealousy. No performance left. Only recognition. I met her eyes once more. Not to win, but to affirm. I no longer needed an apology. I had the room. Not the stage, not the spotlight. Just the truth. And being seen for it. The next morning, I woke up while Nathaniel was still asleep. Sunlight filtered gently through the white curtain, soft as a wordless greeting. I made a cup of black coffee, leaned against the high-rise balcony of our hotel, and looked out over Dallas just beginning to stir. But in my mind, one question kept circling quietly. Did Mom see it all? Not just the video, but the journey from the girl cut out of every frame. A phone notification buzzed. A message from Aunt Rebecca. "Do you have time to stop by today?" There's one more thing your mother left behind. That afternoon, I returned to the old house where, just under a week ago, I had first seen the video my mother left for me. Aunt Rebecca led me into the study, opened the bottom drawer of an old wooden cabinet. Inside was a brown wooden box, carefully secured with a mechanical lock. A small handwritten card was taped to the lid. "Don't open unless you no longer need permission to stand tall." She handed me the key. I unlocked it. Inside wasn't gold, wasn't scandal. It was a stack of journals and handwritten letters, each dated. The first line in the top journal took my breath away. "Today, my daughter came home with a bruise on her pride. They called her too sensitive. I call it unused strength." I kept reading. Line by line, page by page. In one entry, Mom detailed the family meeting from years ago, how she, Vanessa, carefully persuaded everyone that I was hard to connect with, always drawing attention by being silent. Mom had sat there, quiet. But afterward, she wrote, "I was wrong to stay silent and let you learn survival on your own. But I won't let the truth stay buried forever. I'm R1." In another envelope, I found the original checks Mom had written, attempts to support my grad school tuition, to help with medical bills after my health scare, to remind me I was never unworthy of her love. All of them intercepted. All bore forged signatures on the back. I gave every document to the lawyer. Not to sue. Not to go public. But to timestamp the truth. I requested certified copies stored in 3 places: the law office, my personal safe, and one copy sent directly to Nathaniel's private email. "Why are you sending this to me?" he asked when he received the digitized folder. I answered softly, "Because I don't want to carry this alone anymore. The truth isn't a burden. It's the map I use to never wander back into that shadow again." Nathaniel squeezed my hand gently. "And what if, one day, you forget how far you've come?" I smiled. "Then the real ones will remind me." A week later, I returned to the house my mother left me in Galveston. A small red-roofed cottage at the end of a bougainvillea-lined road. I cleaned each room, not in order. I dusted every photo frame, every table surface, every sea-salted window pane. In my old bedroom, the corkboard still hung on the wall. I printed a new photo, my mother, looking straight into the video camera, hand over her heart, eyes steady. Below it, I wrote a quote from one of her letters. "You don't need to be part of someone else's legacy. You're building your own." I hammered the nail, hung the photo, took one step back, and I saw it clearly. I was no longer the girl trying to squeeze into a family party just to earn a seat. I was the woman who placed her own chair. One no one else could claim. One no one needed to approve. As for the chair they once placed for me, beside the bathroom, no name, no flowers. I've kept it in memory. As a quiet reminder. When they push you to the margins, step back and build another room entirely. A month after the Dallas Gala, a letter arrived at the Portland address I once used as a student, but since I'd moved long ago, it was forwarded to Nathaniel's law office. The sender: St. Haven Church, Waco, Texas. I opened it. One line at the top made me pause. Per the private wishes of Mrs. Elizabeth Quinn, Miss Marissa Quinn is invited to attend a memorial held at the church where she once served in the choir. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. Just felt something rare, like a chapter quietly closing, not with a knock, but with a silent nod from the past. Nathaniel held my hand as I finished reading. "We'll go," he said. St. Haven Church wasn't large. Red brick walls, peaked roof, stained glass windows depicting biblical scenes glowing in the morning sun. She had sung here every Sunday for 15 years, a detail none of them ever mentioned in their polished eulogies. But I remembered. We arrived early. I wore a navy dress, hair pinned up simply. Nathaniel wore light gray instead of black because he knew my mother hated black at funerals. "Feels like an apology sent to the wrong address," she once said. I walked in, and every head turned. Not because of the dress, but because it was still me, only this time, not entering like someone begging for a seat. My father's side of the family slowed their steps, some even bowed slightly as I passed. One woman whispered to her friend, "That's her," from the video. But this time, there was no laughter. Only silence. Vanessa arrived late. She wore all black, as always, except no one rose to greet her. She scanned the room quickly, eyes brushing past mine before darting away. I didn't nod, she didn't smile. No pleasantries were exchanged. We both understood, this moment didn't belong to either of us. It belonged to my mother. The memorial began with a modest slideshow photos of my mother, as a student, teaching elementary school, on picnics, reading under wisteria. Then came photos of her and me. No filters, no edits, no retouching. Just real-life moments, captured with love that needed no explanation. Vanessa bowed her head lower as those photos played. A faint cough escaped from a seat behind me. I didn't turn around. Then the pastor stepped up to the pulpit. Mrs. Elizabeth left behind an audio message to be played only once, and only today. The sound began. If you're hearing this, it means I've gone. And I hope no one's here out of duty. I want only those here for love. I squeezed Nathaniel's hand. My mother's voice was slow and warm, like morning light. Family isn't who shouts your name at parties, it's who silently stands between you and the wind when no one else sees. There was a rustle of seats behind me. A few turned toward Vanessa. Some in this room believed silence preserved peace, but silence in the face of injustice, my dear, is betrayal dressed as diplomacy. Heavy breaths. Then stillness. I sat quietly. No tears. No tension. Just my chin lifted, letting every word my mother left behind settle into my spine. The recording ended. And that was enough. No one needed to say more. After the service, people came to shake my hand. Not rushed. Not filled with cliches like, "You're so strong." These handshakes carried weight. Depth. From those who once misjudged and now saw clearly. A silver-haired man, once my father's closest friend, bowed his head. I stayed silent when I shouldn't have. "I'm sorry." I nodded. Not with a smile, not with instant forgiveness, but with acceptance. Vanessa stood at the far end of the hall. No one approached her. She waited for no one. As I walked past, she didn't call my name. But for the first time, her eyes held no defense. Only acknowledgement. And that was enough. I stepped out of the church. Sunlight touched my hair like golden dust. Nathaniel walked just behind me, silent, steady hand in mine. On the worn stone steps, I paused and turned to look back one last time. Not to see who was watching, but to say thank you. To the mother who quietly placed me back where I belonged. In the frame. But not the Vanessa of galas. Not the woman who once held power like stage lights caught in her lashes. This was Vanessa stripped of performancer maybe. Stripped by it. She wore an old coat, no makeup, her hair loose, eyes sunken. In her hand was a thin white envelope, stained faintly with coffee at the corner. "I need to talk," she said. No request to come in. No Marissa. No attempt at closeness. I nodded, stepped aside in silence. She sat on the sofa, poured herself water. Still clutching the envelope. "Everything's gone," she began. "The invites. The funding. The condo in Austin seized by the bank. The investors? Gone. All in 1 month." I didn't ask questions. Didn't sigh, didn't smirk. Brandon's under investigation, money laundering and financial fraud. They combed through everything. Emails, accounts. I didn't know I truly didn't. Her voice shook. But that didn't save me. I set my tea on the table, waiting. She opened the envelope. Inside, a stack of papers, business dissolution filings. She slid them toward me. "This is all that's left, and I might be the last person in this family to come find you without pretending anymore." I sat in silence. In that moment, I didn't see a villain. I saw a woman swallowed whole by the very game she'd once mastered. "You don't have to answer. I'm not asking for anything," she continued. "But if one day you ever could forgive, then." I cut in, calm but clear. "Vanessa, forgiveness isn't something I give. It's something you earn when you stop denying your part in someone else's pain." She looked at me, eyes glossy but tearless. Maybe because she had nothing left to cry out. "I don't hate you anymore," I added. "You think what you did twisted my life. But in truth, it clarified it. Made me see others more clearly. Made me see myself more clearly." "Oh," she exhaled, for the first time not trying to sit straight. "And the cost?" I stood up. Silence without apology, but also nothing left to prove. She nodded. Didn't ask to stay. Didn't thank me. Just quietly left for the first time without looking back to check how others were reacting. That night, when Nathaniel returned, I told him what happened. He listened, then asked just one thing. "You okay?" I smiled. Didn't answer. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt free. I pulled out a blank sheet of paper and wrote in bold letters. Not everyone who falls is a failure. Some just fell off a throne they never earned. Then I taped it to the wall above my desk. Not for anyone else to read, but to remind myself. I don't need to reclaim power. I just need to stay free of the kind that once buried me. 2 weeks after the gala night in Dallas, a quiet email appeared in my work inbox. Sender, the Holleridge Foundation. Subject line: Invitation to the Q4 Honoring Night of Influential Voices. I read it without a racing heart. No thrill, no nerves, just a strange sense of peace. This wasn't a test invitation. Not a PR move in someone else's fallout. It was an official ceremony recognizing those who'd created lasting impact through resilience, advocacy, and social influence, and for the first time, my name was listed. First. No Vanessa. No one from the Whitman circle on the guest list. On my wrist. The watch my mother once left for me. As I stepped into the room, a hush rippled outward, not because they were trying to figure out who I was, but because they knew. And they were looking at me, like a fixed point in themselves. A young woman approached. She was a representative from the organizing committee, handing me a silver laser-engraved name pin. Marissa Quinn, the woman who reframed the story. I looked at the words. No flashy title. Nothing more needed. I nodded and accepted it. When the MC began the official recognition segment, I was invited on stage. The entire room stood not out of tradition, but because they had witnessed something. Maybe through a clip. A headline. A single gala night. I walked up, stood at the mic. The lights weren't harsh, the music didn't swell. Just quiet. Just respect. I spoke slowly, each word like a nail set into wood. There was a time I thought being invited to the table meant I was finally accepted. But after years of standing near restrooms at events I once thought I was lucky to attend, I realized not every chair is worthy of the one who sits. Light applause. I paused. Let them sit with it. We live in an era where images matter more than truth. But I'm standing here today not because I looked better or spoke better. I'm here because I chose not to be silent even when my voice shook. I looked out into the audience. Some were crying. Some nodded slowly. And if anyone out there hears me, if you've ever been erased from the story, ever made to fade into the background, know this. You don't need a microphone to be heard. You just need to hold your truth long enough that no one can deny it anymore. I finished. The room rose again in applause, louder this time, not instructed, just felt. And in that crowd, I saw her. Vanessa. Standing alone near the exit, in an old beige dress, the same color I once wore the night they cast me out of the party. Her eyes were red. No more walls. No jealousy. Just understanding, late but real. I didn't smile. I didn't nod. I simply stepped down from the stage, straight toward Nathaniel, took his hand in mine. We walked together through the rows of chairs, past eyes wide with awe, with surprise, but we didn't stop. I didn't need anyone to hold me back. Because now, I no longer needed a seat. I was the room. 3 months after the night of the gala, I received a handwritten letter. Cream envelope, the handwriting careful but slightly shaky. No return address. But I recognized the handwriting immediately. Vanessa. I didn't open it right away. I left it on my desk, where sunlight touched it in the morning and warm lamplight softened it by night. It took me 3 days to reach for it again. The letter wasn't long. No flourishes, no build-up. Marissa, I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't think I deserve it. I just want to thank you for not retaliating, even though you had every reason to. I used to think silence was weakness. Now I know it's a strength I never had. You once told me forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's choosing not to bleed for a healed wound. I'm not healed yet, but I'm starting to understand. Pain doesn't always mean you were wronged. Vanessa. I folded the letter and placed it in the box beside the one my mother left me. Not to keep it. One Saturday morning, I returned to the small house in Galveston, where Mom used to grow ivy all along the back garden wall. Nathaniel came with me. He didn't ask why I wanted to go. He just brought a book, a few tea bags, and the kind of silence that feels like support. I stepped into the office, opened my laptop, and officially completed the registration for the nonprofit I'd dreamed about for years. Frame her. Tagline written below the logo. Reframing the story they erased you from. The launch was quiet. I only sent emails to a few women. A single mother who'd been cut from her own sister's wedding invitation list. A student who'd been cropped out of a group photo because she didn't fit the concept. And a middle-aged woman who once dated into a wealthy family. Now erased like she never existed. They came quietly. One by one. No gowns, no heels. No one calling each other ma'am to keep roles in place. We just sat. We shared. We wrote our names. And we signed a blank white canvas hanging by the door. No title, no slogan. Just signatures. That canvas now hangs in the main office where I work every day. And every time I look at it, I remember. I was once erased. Once seated near the restroom in a dress they mocked. Once sent letters that never came back. Once received checks I never saw. But then, I stood up. No shouting. No begging. No apologizing for being real. And when they came looking, out of collapse, regret, or just nowhere left to turn, I already had a life they no longer had the power to touch. This story doesn't end with triumph. It ends with autonomy. With the sound of footsteps walking firmly away from the door that once slammed shut in my face. Without looking back. Because when you no longer need a seat at their table, you start building your own house. And sometimes, the strongest reply is saying nothing at all. Just living truthfully, clearly, and at peace.